don't have any notes prepared, but I'll just go for it. It's in manual focus. There we go. All right, today's date is what?
28th
Of?
November 2002.
Okay. And your full name?
Barbara Jean Barrett. Barbara Jean Waters Barrett.
And your maiden name is Waters.
Right.
Okay. And what's your address now?
80 South Pleasant, Lake Zurich, Illinois.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about, well, first tell me your birth date.
October 16th, 1935.
Okay. And your siblings are?
You, my oldest,
Your
Peter.
siblings, your siblings.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
My siblings are, my oldest sister was Marguerite Elsie Waters, Hazel Geraldine Waters, Juanita Laverne Waters, Catherine Lucille Waters, and me, Barbara Jean Waters.
So you're the youngest.
Yes.
And you were all raised where?
Well, various places, because it was like two families. My mother had two older daughters, and then there was a span of time, and then she had three more children. So the older children were born, one I believe in Avon Park, one was born in Lakeland. The oldest I believe was born in Lakeland.
It's all in Florida?
All in Florida. And then Juanita was born locally around West Palm Beach somewhere. I'm not sure exactly where, but I believe it was West Palm Beach. And then,
were most of you raised in
yeah,
in West Palm Beach,
right,
primarily?
right.
And what was where did you live? Do you remember the address?
Well, when I was born, I have all this in my genealogy, but I don't have it at the tip of my tongue. But when I was born in a home, not in a hospital, and it was on Okeechobee Road. And when I was 3 months old, my dad bought the house that was catty corner across the way. And I was raised in one house all of my life after that, right on 915 Florida Avenue, West Palm Beach, which is now gone, with a big shopping mall, and it's beautiful.
And your parents' names?
Vernon Owen Waters and Agnes Ellen Brannon Waters, and which later she married again years after my dad died. I forget his name because I never actually met him, but it was a very short marriage. He was
Uphelt.
Uphelt, yes. He was a chiropractor, I believe, or a doctor, but they were very much in love, and he was a lot older than her. And when he died, his family wanted him to be buried back in Pennsylvania. So, and my mother was on the best of terms with his children, which one of the daughters was his age, if not the only daughter. I don't even know how many kids this man had, but my mother and her were very good friends.
Okay, now you've made a lifetime hobby of genealogy, and while this video will not specifically get into the incredible depth and storytelling involved with that, I mean, hopefully we'll get a chance to do that in another tape. Tell me a little bit about their parents.
Well, my mother, her father was David Yulee Brannon, and I believe that there was a governor of Florida or some high dignitary that was named David Yulee, and I believe that that's how he got his name. That's my own guess, because that's such an unusual combination. But his father was born in Georgia, John Henry Brannon, and John Henry married a Sarah Thompson. So when they were living in Columbia County, Florida, when my grandfather, David Yulee, was born.
What year are we talking about?
1859, I believe. Yeah, no, 60.
So your grandfather was born in 1860?
1859.
Okay.
He was born in 1859, March 15th. But the thing is that he had two sisters, and here his mother was left a widow. And I guess him being a teenager, she needed to put him more in a setting where there was male influence. So she brought him down to Kissimmee, Florida. And I haven't gotten that deep into what the family's name. My mother always said it was Lockhart or Lockhart, and I haven't looked it up because there's so much information coming because my people have been in Florida and Georgia for so long that I just get an abundance of information. Mm-hmm. So anyway, he was very unhappy there, and he walked. At that time, there were not paved roads or anything, but he walked to Lakeland because his aunt had married Jesse Keene, which was a pioneer of Lakeland, Florida. So it was Elizabeth Brannon married Jesse Keene. That was his aunt. So he walked over there, and it took a while to get there, but that's where he started living and working for his aunt and uncle.
The name of that town was what?
It was Lakeland, or right outside of Lakeland. They've even named a school after Jesse Keene. Yeah, it's a very prominent name. And they're buried in Mount Enon Cemetery, which is one of the oldest cemeteries in Florida.
So that's your father's side?
That was my mother's side.
Your mother's side.
So that was her father, David. Okay. He met his wife, which was my grandmother, Mary Brannon. Her maiden name was Carlton. David Yulee met her. She was working for one of the families because, you know, it was a big family deal about, he was a cowboy. David Yulee worked as a cowboy and for the uncle and aunt. So they had a large bunch of cousins and things there. So my grandmother was working in one of the houses, and I don't know what she did, but that's where he met my grandmother. And they got married in Polk County.
Polk County, Florida.
Yeah. And they lived in Lakeland to raise their family.
Mm-hmm. So he was a cowboy.
Yeah. David Yulee started out as a young man, 15, 16 years old, as a cowboy working for his aunt and uncle in Lakeland, in that area.
So how did your parents meet?
My parents, I really don't know. I just know that I heard the old story that my mother was sitting on a porch and he kept riding by on his motorcycle. And
when would this have been, 1918?
Oh, it could have been because they got married, I believe, in 1919. Mm-hmm. But anyway, my mother always laughed and said that he ran up a telephone pole watching her. So they got married, but the reason they got married is that I think my mother was on a rebound because she loved another fellow, and I believe his name was Ollie Green. And my Aunt Easter found out that this guy that was supposed to come back and marry my mother found out he was married.
Come back from World War I?
He was in the service, and he was stationed somewhere locally, but he was going to come back, he said, to marry my mother. And here my Aunt Easter found out he was married and told my grandmother and grandfather. And so my mother ended up several months later marrying my father.
I know there's a picture of her in a wedding dress. Tell me a little bit about that.
She made that dress for the first man that she was going to marry. Mm-hmm. She loved him with all her heart, and I think she loved him for many years after, because I remember she had that certain gleam in her eye when she'd think of him. Mm-hmm. But she did marry my father, and she did love my father. Mm-hmm. So
where was, tell me about Vernon. He had a nickname, his initials?
V.O.
V.O.
Yeah.
And so if somebody referred to him back then, they referred to him as V.O.
And they eloped and got married in Orlando, my mother and dad.
So they didn't tell anybody, they just went and did it.
Yeah. And my father learned to be a plasterer from one of my mother's brothers. And that brother, Uncle Bob, taught Aunt Easter's husband how to be a plasterer. And Aunt Easter married a Richard Farr, F-A-R-R. So anyway, Uncle Altry was a plasterer. Uncle Bob taught him. Everybody built homes and all that, so that was more or less the business the family did.
And he was born when? Vernon V.O. was born about?
Vernon was born, that's a whole nother story. He was born in Key West in 1894.
So he was born 1894. Now, he was raised in Key West?
He was born all over the place because his mother died maybe a couple of years or so. She was only 26, I believe, when she died. And she was a Johnson, and she was born up in the Bradenton area, the Sarasota area, and Manatee County. And somehow my grandfather had met her, and she was a second wife, sorry. He had married prior. My grandfather lived up around Kissimmee, and he was married to a woman that they had a great deal of children, but he had most of them in Key West. But something had happened up in Kissimmee so that they moved to Key West. And after the first wife died, he went back up toward Lakeland area. And I don't know the full story of why he was up there, but this is my grandfather now. He married my grandmother, which was a young woman, and I understand that because of the age difference and the fact that he had a large family, her parents didn't want her to marry my grandfather, mainly an age difference.
20 years you're talking? I mean, how big?
No, she was born around 1868, and Isaac was born in 1848. So there was a 20-year difference there. So anyway, she married him, and she came down to Key West, and they lived there under the name of Donald Walterson. He had an alias. Sometimes it was Donald Eleanor. Anyway, he's buried in Tampa under Donald Eleanor Walterson, and she's buried next to him. Or no, his third wife is buried next to him, Susan Walterson.
So this is V.O.'s parents.
V.O.'s parents was Elizabeth Edna Johnson, and she's buried in Key West. And because of the land there being so shallow with the ocean all around them, every so many years they bury somebody else on top of that land. And I understand that there was like one of the other relatives was buried on top of my grandmother's, maybe even a couple more since then, but they try and keep it in the family.
So he, V.O. again, was born down in Key West and bounced around.
And he was raised by children. I have this in my genealogy, and I don't remember it right off the top of my head, but he was raised by some of the children that were already grown by my father's first wife. And they took care of him, and I think when he was 3 or 4 years old, maybe 5, he was with his stepbrother in Miami, and I heard that he fell in the lake and almost drowned. And
Could he swim?
I don't know.
You don't know if V.O. could swim?
I don't know. No. I do know that the third wife that my grandfather married they only had one child, and that was by Susan Bass, and she was from the Kissimmee area, and I think her father was a sheriff or something. Anyway, they had one child that was Henry, and that's the one uncle on my father's side that I knew, and I really liked him. I met his sister Estelle. That they had the same mother and father, and Estelle was married to a farmer, right outside of Tampa. In fact, the Air Force took over their farm and turned it into MacDill Field. And before this all happened, and I was a kid, we went over and visited her, and a couple of times she came to West Palm Beach and visited us. But she She, well, I met her husband, Hiram Freeman. So she was Estelle Freeman. She had a lot of kids. And anyway, they were raised, her and Henry were raised by other relatives together. And then the third wife, Susan, that had Henry, she raised my father the lengthiest time.
So do you know anything about your father's education?
No, I don't.
Did he get to 8th grade?
I have no idea. I know my mother went past 8th grade, but in those days the women mainly, just took a little education and then stayed home. It was a farmer's wife or something.
So your dad he was living in Miami, and then he joined the military, and he was involved in the military?
He's in some 1917, it's on the internet, you could look it up, for Manatee County. I believe he's in Manatee County listing of joining the World War I.
What did he do in World War I?
He wasn't in it long. For some reason, he was, what would you say? He was
unfit?
Not unfit, but he was given a discharge, and it was honorably, and it was some kind of a health problem.
But you don't know what it was?
No, I don't. And I have never mailed off for the papers, but I do have the numbers. I have a sheet of paper. I think he was getting a pension for a while, and that's all I know. But I do have the numbers where I could send off and get the information.
So he didn't do a full tour in the military?
Like he was only in, no, not even that. I think he was only in a short time of months, but I don't know how many. Not a year.
All right, so he gets out of the military and he learns how to be a plasterer from Uncle Bob.
Yeah.
And he begins in the early 20s.
Well, now, he got out of the military, I believe, before, I think that was 1917 that he joined. And they got married around 1919. So it was after 1919 that he learned to be a plasterer.
What did he do to support himself before he became a plasterer?
I have no idea. But he must have been doing okay because he had a motorcycle.
What kind of motorcycle? You know?
I have no idea.
Do you have a picture of that motorcycle?
Yes, I think I do.
Well, then we could figure out what kind it was. It looks like an Indian or something. It's classic.
It had a big wheel that went out forward.
So he starts being a plasterer to make a living in the early 20s.
Yeah.
How long does he do that?
He always did that.
So he does that throughout the 20s?
That was what he did his entire life.
So anything he did over and above that was just extra?
Like deputy sheriff,
His main way of supporting himself was plastering.
Right.
What did he plaster?
He built theaters. He also built houses too. But he built the Surf Theater in West Palm Beach that was on, was it Datura Street? Yeah, on Datura Street.
Do you have pictures of that?
Yeah, I have some pictures of the building going up, yeah.
I remember seeing some pictures of a building going up.
Yeah, and I think he had a 47 Cadillac at that time.
Does the Surf Theater still survive? Is it still around?
I don't think so.
Any of the places he built still around that you know of?
I don't know. But he worked on all the theaters because we had a pass to get into all the theaters. The whole family could go into the theater.
So what was he had some sidelines other than being a plasterer?
Well, he was a deputy sheriff for Palm Beach County because, didn't I give you his badge?
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, and somebody's got his blackjack.
Not me. Although I think Jim has one.
Then it's Jimmy's got the blackjack. But
How did he get into that?
I don't know. I was just a baby. You know, I was a young child.
What did a deputy sheriff do? I mean, what would
I suppose at night once in a while. I don't know. He didn't do it when I was growing up that I know of because it seemed like he was home every night.
What else did he do besides that?
I don't know. I don't believe there was.
What hobbies did he have?
I don't know if he had any hobbies. I don't recall. I know he loved to listen to the radio at night.
What particular
We
shows?
had no television.
Any shows in particular you remember him listening to?
Well, a lot of it was news. Wasn't there a Gabriel Heater? What is this?
I think it's Heater.
Yeah. I think that that was one of the newscasters he listened to. And remember, he always liked to have his Sunday paper, lay on the front porch and read the paper on Sunday. And we used to always take rides Sunday morning to buy that paper, and he'd buy me a Sunday. And I would finagle until he bought me a second Sunday. I think that was the start of when I started getting bigger, because I was a little girl. I had a nice shape when I was little, 7, 8 years old.
Was he in the Ku Klux Klan?
No, I think his father was. He might have been. I don't know. It's a long time ago. He might have been when he was a young man. He was a young man, and it was in Lakeland, not in West Palm Beach. So it must have been before he married, or maybe right about the time. I don't know. My mother never discussed it.
And your mom, she was a stay-at-home mom, pretty much. Did she take in sewing or something?
She did later in life. I don't remember if it was. I think it could have been before he died. That she was doing simple little repair work for the rich people in Palm Beach. She'd take her little portable sewing machine over to Palm Beach, and it was like an 8-pounder sewing machine. She'd sew buttons on dresses for him, do little repairs.
No, do you have any particular stories about VO? You talked about going to get the paper and the ice cream, and I've heard of any number of them. But I mean, I understand, like many parents, he was a pretty strict disciplinarian.
He was when Margaret and Hazel were growing up. But by the time he mellowed a lot.
He was in his mid-40s by then?
I have no idea. If he was born, he died in 53, and I was like, you know, when I was in junior high, I could get money out of him every day to buy paper. And he knew I didn't need paper, but he'd give me the 50 cents anyway. And he'd drive me to school 2 blocks in a Cadillac. He did have the first 1947 Cadillac in the whole town of West Palm Beach.
So he probably did all right money-wise if he's out buying a car.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you were raised without any money? Or
in one way, I always had plenty of food to eat. He was tight on money about buying clothes. He was tight on everything. He would go buy the groceries. My mother'd go with him, but he would pick out all the food. And I suppose she picked out what she needed. But we always had plenty of food piled on the table. And I remember when there was the Second World War that we had a 100-pound bag of sugar in our closet because this was stuff you couldn't get hold of. I don't know how he got it. He was a precinct captain too for voting and all. A civil defense. He oversaw the voting for different elections.
The voting.
You know,
so he wasn't ever in an elected office. That was more of a appointment.
Yeah, probably.
Probably through
political
connections.
Very political.
Years as a deputy sheriff.
Yeah, and he had. There was one sheriff, John Kirk, I believe was his name. That rumor was he used to leave his money in that man's safe over the weekend. And when my father died, there was no money. There was nothing. What we did find out was that he had property up off Fort Pierce, 160 acres. And my mother mortgaged the house. When she found out about it, somebody sent her some kind of notice that there was one more payment due. She mortgaged the house and paid that last $1,000 payment for it. I believe the land was $4,000 total. And he kept telling my mother, one day we're going to be rich, we're going to be rich. But my mother was not a businesswoman. And she listened to some crooked lawyers, and they bought the property off of her under, I'm sure, under an assumed name, and turned around and sold that land for a massive amount because it was up, I think it was Fort Pierce, off of the ocean of Fort Pierce.
So what was, I mean, he was pretty much a steak and potatoes kind of guy. And,
oh, yeah.
Traditional, starchy.
Yeah, we had potatoes almost every night. And we had, just foods we ate was like both him and my mother were very good cooks, and he'd go in there, he could fry steak or he'd fry liver. Or one of the tricks my mother pulled on me was I come home at lunchtime one time. I always come home for lunch. I mean, most of the time I'd come home because it was close enough to walk home. And one day she was ironing, and there was this pan of meat, and I took some, and she said, "What is it?" I said, "What is it?" And she said, "Oh, try it." So I tried it, and I said, "Ma, that's the best steak I ever ate in my life." And come to find out it was liver. She could never get me to eat that liver because I just didn't like the name liver. So here after that, I loved beef liver. But we had shrimp. My dad would buy big bags of shrimp, and it was always fresh. We'd have shrimp, and it'd be served cold with ketchup. And we always had pork chops, steak.
How'd you get along with your sisters? I mean, you were the youngest, so would they play tricks on you, or?
Well, Juanita did one time. She was supposed to babysit with Lucille and I. And my mother and dad went to the movies. And we were just little kids. Juanita was like 5 years older than me, I think. And they put on sheets, and her and her girlfriends, and they pretended to be ghosts outside the window trying to tease us. And then they tried to they mixed pickle hog's feet with ginger ale and some other stuff, was trying to get Lucille and I to drink it. And Lucille got so scared she wet her pants, but I wouldn't drink it. And boy, did my mother hear about this when she got home. But no, I was much more strong-minded than Lucille.
Were you a good student?
Yeah, I could memorize anything. I hated school, actually, and I did make good A's, though. I made good grades. But you see, I had Juanita that went through school ahead of me, and she made some of the teachers dislike her very badly. And so there were some that carried a grudge over, because in those days you had these old ladies teaching. And I remember Mrs. Wiley, the drama teacher, she just didn't like me at all because of Juanita. But she liked Lucille. Anyway, I did not want to go to gym and undress and take showers in front of anybody because I was a heavy-set girl. And kids are cruel, so I didn't want to ever undress in front of anybody, so that's how I ended up joining the band. And I was in the marching band, and I was in the a cappella choir. When I was in the 7th grade, now a cappella, you're only high school people in that. In the 7th grade, me and 2 of my friends, we used to always harmonize. So we did Do the Hucklebuck and some other songs, and we were really good. And it got around to the vocal teacher of the a cappella choir director, and she invited us to come and sing in front of the choir. We stood up there. We weren't frightened, scared, nervous, or anything, and we sang for the whole a cappella choir. And I mean, it was a big choir. It was in 3 sections. And the minute I got into high school, I was invited to be into a cappella.
Palm Beach High School?
Yeah. That was another thing. I went, they call it the Hill, and there was elementary from 1st to 6th. That was the building right in the center of the hill. To the left of it on the south side was the junior high school, which was 7th to 9th. Then you get over to high school, and that was 10th to 12th. Now, I know most schools say from 9 to 12 is high school, but in Florida, the 9th grade was part of the junior high.
And you went to school 9 months out of the
I went and I went from 1st grade through 12th on the Hill. And out of my graduation class, there was only 6 or 7 of us that did that from 1st to 12th.
You had some famous people in that school?
Oh, I would say so. The one I really liked was Monty Markham, and he was the president of our class. He still comes to all of the reunions. He played the second Perry Mason, but it didn't go very far. And he was on Angela Lansbury's Murder, She Wrote. He was on some of her shows. He's even today, you'll see him on television playing some B part. But, I mean, like he'll be a character. And it isn't like he's the star, but you know, he's one of the bigger characters in these shows. He's a very kind and good man, and now I understand. At our last reunion, he stood up and told us about his whole life, and told us about how him and his son are in business now, sort of like. You know, like a voice that's behind the action. What is the name of that guy on Channel 2 that he does his own documentaries?
Bill Curtis.
Bill Curtis. Now, he's going to be doing that down there. He's probably doing it now. He says, you'll hear his voice, but you won't see him.
Yeah, he's doing a lot of voices. I hear him.
Yeah. So anyway, they're in the business down there, and we're having our 50th high school reunion coming up next October of 2003. So I'm going to go, God willing.
What about the other?
Burt Reynolds?
Yeah.
Buddy Reynolds is what he was known as. Yeah, he was a year behind me, but he's in our yearbook. He was on the football team and all that, and he had quite a story. And there was Barbara Bostock. She was a ballet dancer on Perry Como's show. And I believe there was one other personality, but I can't think who it was. I know Hazel went to school there with that pastor named Kennedy. I think he has a big church down in Fort Lauderdale. He's on every Sunday. Anyway, that's about it for...
What'd you do as hobbies? What'd you do when you were a kid?
Oh, I was so busy. Besides the band, the orchestra, and the choir, when I was in senior high, I don't even remember how I got involved with these women, but there were these two women that were sisters, and another woman that's husband owned the jewelry store down in Clematis Street, well-known, Leggett's music store. Leggett's, Legitts. Anyway, Vera Leggett and these two, one's husband owned a concrete store. You know, they were very Rinker concrete. We got together and was harmonizing, and their father he was a barber shopper. He wanted us to start a Sweet Adeline club. This was back when Sweet Adelines were just forming. Well, you had to have 25 people to charter, and we got together for that. I didn't even have the money to start and pay dues. This man paid my dues, these girls' father. But you know what? We got the 25 people, and we started the Royal Palm chapter of Sweet Adelines. And we had a lot of famous quartets come down and sing in the Palm Beach Auditorium when we'd have our shows. They'd come down and perform, to be honest. And anyway, the Sweet Adelines was one of my top hobbies all my life since I was in 12th grade. And but as far as activities go, my dad had the theater pass for all of us. We could go to any theater, so I could go to the theater at night. I'd go swimming in the days, or I was marching. If it was during the school year, I'd be marching. And traveling with the band, traveling with the choir. And at the same time, I maintained took commercial courses in high school, which was bookkeeping, shorthand, filing, typing, whatever. All the things that you do in an office, I took that. Had a lot of shorthand.
Did you get in trouble?
Oh, I had a teacher that didn't like me because of my sister Juanita. And I never, in my entire high school time, had a study hall. I had credits you wouldn't believe. And the day I went to pick up my graduation gown, this teacher was standing there with some other people handing out the gowns, and I think there was a bunch of juniors there helping. And when she heard my name, Barbara Waters, the girl took my gown and was handing it to me, and this teacher turned around and grabbed the robe out of her hand and says, "You're not graduating. You don't have enough credits." And that was the first I had heard of it. And I went home crying, a senior now, about to graduate. My father went up to that school, to Clyde Harris, the principal, went up to see him like a roaring bull. And I tell you, they were behind closed doors, and you could hear my father. Next thing you know, the principal's calling that teacher up to the office. She came. I got my gown, and I graduated. I had more than enough credits.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why she did that, except that she never liked me because of Juanita.
Did you get in trouble with your parents? I mean, for doing anything?
Oh, no. I can't think of anything.
Mm-hmm.
Can you? I can't.
Well, just the only thing I remember is being forced to eat the butter and all that stuff. You know.
Forced to eat butter?
Yeah. Didn't you sneak some butter in?
Oh, I used to grab butter when I was a baby off the table and get under the dining room table and eat the butter.
Mm-hmm.
But no.
Ice cream? Forced to eat ice cream?
I loved ice cream. Oh, yeah, one time, because I had such a love for ice cream, my dad bought a great big gallon of strawberry ice cream and put me at the dining room table and told me to eat it all. And I mean, I was a child, and this thing looked this big to me. It was a round thing. I sat there and started eating it, and you know, I didn't finish it, and I don't even remember how the story ended. I just know for years and years I couldn't eat strawberry ice cream.
So was strawberry. Okay, so.
And that's the only time he ever did anything like that. My father never, ever struck me, ever. One time I came close to it when he was over at the service station, which was right a half a block away from our house. And he was sitting there talking to these guys, you know, the old cronies talking. He told me to go home, and I said, no, I want to stay with you. And then when he'd tell me again to go home, I still said no. And he got up. He told me he was going to spank me if I didn't mind, and I didn't mind. And he chased me home, and I ran up the stairs, hid under his bed, and he found me. And do you know what? I remember coming out from under that bed and putting my arms around his neck. Daddy, please don't spank me. He didn't spank me. So, you know, a father and his little girl.
What is, let's talk about history and society a little bit. What is, do you remember, when you were born in 36, what do you remember about?
I wasn't. I was born in 35.
35. What do you remember about World War II?
I just remember that I was born right out after the Depression, but we never were hungry from what I heard. But my sister Margaret was going with a guy that I can remember. He brought me home a lot of bubble gum, something you never get. He brought me a huge box of bubble gum. So when they were in those little papers that were twisted on each end and had the little round thing in the middle. I know stockings were hard to get, and I didn't wear stockings at that age. I just remember being in the car, driving down the street with my father. I was a little kid in the back when they announced that the war was over. And everybody was in the labor union there on the corner was all yelling, yay, the war is over.
Do you remember, so you were too young to remember Pearl Harbor. You would have been 6.
Yeah, I don't remember it.
But as a 10-year-old, you remember the end of.
Yeah.
Do you remember anything about the atomic bomb?
No.
You just know the war was over.
Yeah. I just probably newsreels. They'd show the aftermath of it. Big mushroom coming up.
Do you remember? What about in World War II? Do you remember people not coming home, or were you too little to figure out, the people were dying?
No, there was, as far as I know, there was no one around us that had any deaths.
What did you do at night? I mean, you had radio. You listened to particular radio shows?
My dad used to sit by the radio. We had no televisions. Nobody had televisions at that time. We had radios. And I'd sit on his lap and we'd listen to the news or we'd listen to the stories. There were story time or any of those shows that would interest a child. But I know that we listened to Milton Berle And we listened to radio personalities at that time.
Jack Benny.
Oh, always Jack Benny. But I can't tell you off the top of my head. And I don't remember. I just know that there were people on television that, or I mean on radio that we'd listen to that was entertaining. The whole family had listened.
So you just sit in a room and listen.
The living room. And we were one of the first to get a television set when they came out.
When would that have
And
been? The early 50s?
I don't recall the year, but I know it was Milton Berle on TV. And some kind of a talent show.
Did people come over to your house to see the TV?
No, not that I recall.
So you didn't have that kind of those kind of friends in the neighborhood that would feel that was that interesting?
Well,
to see
I tell you where our house was situated. We had a Jewish family living next door that were wealthy. They didn't bother to come over to our house. And they were very private people. I did know Alan. Their name was Oppenheimer. And I believe they came from White Plains, New York. And they were there in the winter or in the summer and came down to Florida in the winter. It was a girl that I know even to this day that she got married. She was in the band with me. She got married after I got married, and she's got a family that's grown now. But that was Lorraine, and we were buddies. And at night, people stayed in their own homes.
Oh, okay. So your racial relations. What was racial relations like in Florida? I mean, you had the African Americans down there. You had Mexicans, I would assume,
I don't remember Mexicans.
or Cubans.
Probably Cubans, but not many. I mean, they were in Miami, they were in Tampa. In fact, on Sundays, down the A1A highway by the ocean till we got to Miami Beach, and then we'd cross over to Miami. We would go into the Spanish section, and can remember we'd have big plates of yellow rice with a big chicken breast on the very top of it, and that was the best meal. And I suppose there were vegetables, but I don't remember what. And then for dessert, we'd have his favorite, and that was a treat. We'd do that. He loved that kind of food, and I liked it too. We all did.
Did you have were the high schools segregated?
Yeah.
That was just standard.
Palm Beach High School was white. In West Palm Beach, they had what they call Colored Town. And that was west of the business section of West Palm Beach. It was like on Tammy Street that went right through Colored Town. And we used to drive over there to get Harvey's barbecue. Oh, was it the best. Never tasted any since then like his. He made the best barbecue. Anyway, yeah, the colored people had their own section, and at night, if there was a black person in a white area, the police would stop him and ask him what was he doing there, and tell him to go into his own area. And we used to have, I was raised by black nannies, and they would take care of me. There would be some there that would take care of me for maybe 5 or 6 years, and then there'd be a different one because the other one would either die or move or something. But my mother always had, if she wasn't doing it herself, my mother paid 50 cents for a black woman to come in. I think it was 50 cents an hour for her to iron. And they'd always bring their bag with them to change their clothes. And then when they'd leave, part of our silverware was gone. They did take things, and you know, it was just part of the economy. They didn't have much, and this was their way of supplementing. But
so you had domestic help.
Yeah, yeah, and I can remember one time my father was at a job site overseeing the construction of a building, and he had picked up a white suit he had at Cleaners, and it was hanging in his car. Next thing you know, that suit was gone out of his car. And he suspected somebody, and he got the sheriff, and they went into this guy's house in Colored Town, found the suit hid between the mattresses. He got his suit back.
I never heard that one.
It was another thing my dad did that I don't usually tell people about, but if a colored man did something wrong that was offensive, or I don't even know what the reasons were. He used to beat him out in the garage.
Beat him in the garage.
He'd beat him. He'd take his belt and give him a couple of whacks.
How to get him into the garage?
I don't know. It's just what my mother told me. I never saw it myself, and it was very, very rare. It wasn't a regular thing. It was just something that happened that I know of that she told me.
And there was colored fountains and water fountains
Oh,
and
yeah.
restaurants and everything.
Separate bathrooms. When I was a kid and I'd get on the bus, they always sat in the back. And you know what? We were considered the enemy to the black people. So it wasn't a one-way street where we thought they were our enemy. They were just workers as far as I was concerned. They worked for us. But
So it's
they felt bad against the white people too. It was a two-way street.
That's just how it was.
That's the way it was, yeah. They were poor and the whites had money, supposedly. It was a very unequal system.
Now, you told me once about a story where you were in the car and it went underwater.
Oh, yeah. I was just talking about that the other day to one of the family. Well, that was not my day. We were over in Lakeland, my mother, dad, and I, and the dog. And I don't think Lucille was with us, but she might have been, but I don't remember her at all being with us. But we were on our way home, and before we were to leave Lakeland, my mother wanted to go to the cemetery to visit the graves of some relatives, and I had an Aunt Mac that chewed tobacco. My grandmother chewed tobacco too, when she wasn't chewing gum and saving it in a mayonnaise jar. But this Aunt Mac, her name was America. I ran in front of her when we were starting to leave the cemetery, and I had this beautiful dress my mother had made me, had ruffles, a pinafore, ruffles down the side and a square top, and I just loved that dress. And it had ruffles up the back, up to the waist, from the hemline up to the waist. And I ran in front of my Aunt Mac, and she turned her head to spit her tobacco, and it got all down my dress. We had to go back to somebody's house, one of the aunts' houses, wash my dress, everything. So here we got back in the car to leave, and it must have been nearly 2 hours in the drive, maybe 2.5 hours, because I think it only takes 3 hours to cross the state. But we were coming from Lakeland across the flats toward Vero Beach, and I think we were somewhere what they call 4 Points, and we had just passed there. We were on a new asphalt road, and it was lightly raining, but it was just enough to make the road slick. And the car turned over, and we ended up in a canal. And the car was on its side, and my mother was a heavy woman at that time. And I looked over, and there was my father and mother on the floor, under the water. I remember seeing my father's hand come up and push the steering wheel. And they got out. My mother climbed out of that window, and I, to this day, don't know how she squeezed through that window because she was heavy. It seemed like they wouldn't have fit, the two of them, the window and her. But we got out, and when we got up to the street...
Did you open the door to get out?
No, we had to go out the windows.
The windows were open?
Yeah,
Partially,
yeah, they were open. We were, tell you, whatever it was, the windows were open, and it had been a light rain, just enough to wet a new street and make it slick. So we got out of the car, going out through the windows, got the dog out and everything, got up onto the road, and the very first car that came by was the mayor of West Palm Beach, and he was in a white suit. And he had some people with him. He was on his way to a meeting. So they took us back to 4 Points.
And you knew these people?
Well, my dad did.
Yeah.
And we got back to 4 Points, and somehow they got a tow truck out there, and they got the car out. And you know that we drove that car home. It was wet. But they got it working, and we got home. It was like another hour's drive.
Is that the Cadillac?
No, this was an older car.
Wow.
So it was when I was young, because I know the Cadillac was a 47 Cadillac, I believe, 46 or 47, and I was born in 35. So I must have been somewhere around 10 years old.
So again, about your house down there, so you survived this thing in the canal. At home, now I remember hearing stories about chickens in the backyard.
Oh, yeah. My mother raised chickens because we like to have fresh chickens, and she'd get fresh eggs. And there was a duck called Susie, and she'd bite my feet every time I'd go out there. My mother had a funny habit. Any duck at all you'd have, she'd call it Susie. They all were named Susie. And she also had stray cats that would adopt my mother, and she called every one of them Tom. And then she had a Siamese cat in later years that lived in the house. She even called that cat's Tom. There was a story about one of those cats. My mother fed it. It always used to come around, and it was her outside pet. Well, that cat was the best watchdog for my mother. My mother used to sleep in this bed that was right by a window. And if anybody come near that house at night, the cat would come right up and tell her, meowing under her window. Very good watchdog.
So now VO, toward the very end of his life, modifies the garage into apartments?
Yeah. No. My father did not do that.
Okay, but he had
My
a garage.
father tore down the old garage, and he built a brand new garage that was wide. And he even fixed it so that it had a ledge to it and a flat roof, so that in later years he could expand that and put something above it if he wanted to.
Like a second
But
floor?
when he died, my mother took a mortgage out on the house, and had 2 efficiency apartments made in the garage, and that was what sustained her, because she had no income, and she would rent out to a steady, like waitresses that would come down on the season all the time, and she'd rent to them on a monthly basis.
What did she charge?
Oh, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was $50 a month. And she also had the upstairs of our house turned into one big apartment, and put a stove and refrigerator up there and all.
So once kids grew up, she lived downstairs.
My mother lived downstairs, and she rented the upstairs and the 2 apartments in the back.
No, so VO dies. Tell me about that.
He died in '53 of a heart attack. And
Where was he?
where was he? He was sitting in a chair right by the telephone, and he was upset because my cousin was going to go to the show with us on the pass, and he didn't want that to happen, and he did stop it. And but he was having an argument, and my mother said, "Vernon, if you don't stop cursing the Lord like that, he's going to strike you dead." And then she heard gasping, and she ran around. She was in the kitchen, and she ran around the wall to the chair where the phone was, and he was going through a heart attack, and he always used to carry his pills in this pocket. He was sitting on his pills, and my mother didn't know it, and he died. And it was really weird that she said that, if you don't quit cursing the Lord, he's going to strike you dead, and that happened.
And where were you?
I was in the theater. There was 3 of us, and I don't even remember who was with me. It was family. Well, it was a couple of my sisters, I think. Frank came, the one that we wanted to take with us to the theater, but he didn't want to cause a problem. So anyway, Frank came over to tell us that we had to come home right away. That
He pulled you out of the theater?
Yeah.
Out of the movie?
Yeah, came to tell us
What
that.
movie was it?
I don't know. But he come to tell me my father was ill. He didn't say he was dead. He just said he's ill. When we got home, we found out that I got home just in time to see them taking his body out with a sheet over it, putting him into the ambulance.
I remember hearing once a story about you heard music.
Oh, that was when my grandmother died. My grandmother, my mother's mother, was ill. My mother was in Lakeland because she had been warned that Grandma was very ill. And New Year's Eve, I was with my friend spending the night, and she asked me to come spend the night and go babysit with her in Palm Beach because she was going to get good pay, and she'd split the money with me. Well, she didn't split the money with me. She got back. She was very selfish and wouldn't split the money. So I left. The next morning, I got up real early, and I went out and sat on the bus stop. Now, I could have walked home. It was like 8 blocks. But I just, I thought I'd sit there. And I knew the buses were like an hour apart. Mm-hmm. So I'm sitting there on this bench, and behind me is a church. But there was nobody in that church. The doors were locked because I went to examine it after I heard this music. It was the most beautiful music I'd ever heard in my life, ever. And it wasn't like you're hearing a note here, a note here, and a note there. It was like you take a paintbrush and just go like that. The music flowed, and it was like thousands of voices. And when I heard it, it was like it was going up to the sky. It was going in front of me up to the sky. And when I got home, I found out that that's when Grandma had died. And not only that, there were supernatural circumstances around my grandmother's death and my grandfather's death. But there's another story about Grandma, too, that she was sitting on the porch. I don't know what she was doing, either picking peas or shelling peas or something, or crocheting, whatever it was. She was sitting on this old porch. And Hazel tells me the story, and my mother told me, that she saw Jesus come up to her and say, "Mary, put your work away. It's time to come home." And she went in and got on the bed and never got up and died. It was several days, but she never got out of the bed again.
So so your grandmother told this story in that 2-day period to somebody?
Yeah, she did. And because, Aunt Easter lived there, and all of my mother's family was in Lakeland. And another thing is that my grandfather, David Yulee, when he died, he was saying, "Oh, Mary, look down the pathway. There's Jesus standing there with his arms open. You've never seen flowers like this. There's no flowers like this on the earth, Mary. They're beautiful." And he died. And I had other things happen in my life, too, if you want to hear a couple other things. Sure. When I was a young kid, I was up in the window, and it was very hot. And I was sleeping in the bed. Or I wasn't sleeping. I couldn't sleep. It was so hot. And we were 2 blocks away from the cemetery. And I'm laying there looking out the window screen on the 2nd floor of the house on Florida Avenue. I see a whole wedding procession coming up L Street, away from the cemetery, going west on L Street. And there's the bride and the groom, and there was the long veil, and there was people holding the veil, little kids. And it was like a block full of people all dressed up in tuxedos and things, dress clothes, going west. And I watched that, and there was nobody to tell. Everybody's asleep. The next morning I went down and I told them, "Oh, Barbara, you're dreaming." I wasn't dreaming. All my life I've contended I was not dreaming. I saw that.
Yeah, why would there be a wedding? So obviously
I have
real.
no idea what happened. I know nothing except I saw ghost wedding procession.
Why do you think there were ghosts? Did you see through them? How'd you know? Obviously it was.
It was the middle of the night. In the middle of the night, and apparently, I think they were ghosts. They weren't people. And another thing is that I had a boss that wouldn't let me take a day off. And there was a storm coming, a bad snowstorm. And this was when I was living in Chicago, and I had to drive an hour practically to get up to work in the morning to Lincolnshire. And I knew this storm was coming, and he was a real pain too. And he says to me, "Barbara, why do you want tomorrow off? And now this is the guy that always would tell you, it's your vacation days, Barbara. You can do whatever you want with them. Just ask. So here, he asked me what I wanted it for. Is it because of the snowstorm? I says, yeah. And he says, well, if everybody had that attitude, nobody would show up for work. And he denied my vacation day, which he legally shouldn't have been able to do. So the next day I had to drive to work, and that snowstorm hit us. It took me an hour to go down a certain area that ordinarily would have taken 5 minutes. When I turned and started to come home, it took hours, and it was glass, and I was sliding. And when I finally got onto a road that was near my home on Waukegan Road and Milwaukee Avenue, I was just approaching the intersection. I was like a block away. There was nobody there, nobody on the roads at all. All of a sudden, I see a car coming, and it was way down the road, and I saw it turn, and I thought it was going to go in a parking lot. Well, it ended up that it was trying to turn around to go back the other way, and it got stuck on the curb and couldn't back up. So as I was approaching, I was going like 10 or 15 miles an hour, and I saw the car, and then by the time I got close enough, I could see that it wasn't a driveway. He wasn't going into the parking lot. And I hit the brake lightly. I was skidding right into that car. Now, I had never had an accident, ever, up to that time. And I wouldn't have screamed, except I was so close to it, I knew I was going to hit it. And I was just right there at the back fender of that car, and him not backing up. And I yelled, Jesus, Mary, Joseph! And the next thing, in a flash, I was on the other side of the road, facing the same way, but I was completely picked up and put on the other side of the road. And there was no way I could have missed that car hitting it. That was a divine intervention that took me to the other side of that road. Did I ever tell you that? Mm-hmm. Well, that wasn't too long ago, maybe 6 years ago, mm-hmm. maybe 7. Mm-hmm. But that was one of the things that happened. And throughout my life, there have been things that have happened, premonitions and things that happened. I did have an aunt that was psychic. But Mary Ellen and Rosie and I are like tied in. Something really serious happens. The three of us are just like that. Even Jimmy has shown signs of that too, tied in with us.
I can remember being sick, coming home from St. Pat's once as a freshman, and I had a 103 fever. And I didn't know how I was going to make it from the bus stop at Austin and West End or wherever it was to the house. And all of a sudden you just showed up in the car.
I don't even know.
Totally out of the blue. You never would be there and pick me up. And I honestly didn't know how I was going to make it home.
Really? And why didn't you call me and tell me?
Who knows? I probably didn't have any money.
Probably. We were pretty slim there.
All right, so doubling back to, all right, V.O. Waters has died.
And my mother went to, I don't know how she got into meeting these people, but it was a Christian couple that owned an upholstery business up on 24th Street. Mm-hmm. And they asked her, if she wanted to learn how to do upholstery. Now, I don't know whether she went in there through knowing somebody else that knew them or what, but that's what happened. They taught her how to do upholstering. Mm-hmm. And so she was able to work in that store and make money to survive. Because the only thing that my father left, well, he didn't leave anything to her. She had some kind of a little life insurance on him, 10 cents a month. And that's what buried him. Between that and the fact that he was a veteran. He was in the American Legion. And he did have a funeral where they had the flag folded and they had the, like a military thing,
Mm-hmm.
shots over the grave.
Mm-hmm.
So, but my mother didn't have anything, and she was able to learn a trade. You know, sewing wouldn't take you very far.
Were all the girls out of the house other than you?
Margaret was back. When my dad died, I think it was just my mother and I
Mm-hmm.
in '53. But Margaret married this guy, the one I told you about that brought the bubble gum.
Mm-hmm.
Well, found out he was a mental case. We found out years later when they were going through the divorce. About, I don't know if she's married 2 years or 3 years, but when she was going through the divorce, we found out he was a mental case. And so she did get a divorce and come home.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't remember the timeline. I do know that this weirdo took me out to Belglade. He was a salesman for Eli Whitney. And he left me sitting in the car, a little girl, all day in Belglade or Pahokee. It was Pahokee. Left me sitting there all day. No way to go to the bathroom, nothing to drink, no lunch, nothing. And when he came back to the car, I was just squirming. I had to go to the bathroom so bad. He wouldn't let me go to the bathroom. And he said, "Oh, you can wait till we get home." It was like an hour trip to get back into the city. And when we got in there, Margaret had fixed pork chops. And she was in her little apartment on Jessamine Street. And she asked me what I'd had for lunch. And I told her. I said, "I sat in the car all day. I didn't get anything to drink, nothing to eat." Well, I left. There was a big argument after I left. They got into such an argument. He attacked her. And this was what led up to the divorce. Mm-hmm. Because there was a call in the middle of the night. I don't know if you know this, want this kind of information on this.
Sure.
But my mother went down the railroad track to her house, and he had already gone. And she had to call an ambulance. Margaret went to the hospital. He had attacked her. Mm-hmm. And that's what brought on you know, she loved him so much. She loved him even years later. Even before she died, when I went down there, she was still curious enough about him, wanted me to call his number and his telephone number, and I wouldn't do it. And but, you know, just to see, you know, he's still alive or all that. He did eventually marry again and had children. And when he died, there was a big write-up about what a wonderful man he was. I felt like getting in touch with his son, telling him what kind of a man he was. But anyway, Margaret was home again. And I stayed home. I was the only one that could drive. And when I got out of school, I got a job at Likes Meatpacking as a bookkeeper. And there was the big freezer there where they had all the meat hanging. And every week when I got paid, I would buy meat to take home, got it wholesale, and would bring it home to my mother.
So you were driving the Cadillac at this time?
Yeah.
And you were the only person in the family who could drive?
Well, the only one living there.
So your mother didn't know how to drive? Never
No.
learned?
My mother did know how when she was a young woman. My father wouldn't let her drive, and
Wouldn't
she
let
got,
her.
yeah, and then later, my mother did take up driving again toward the end of her life. She had a little car. Twice the door was taken off because she wouldn't look behind her when she'd open up the car door. Twice the car door was taken off.
There was a '63 Falcon.
Yeah. Yeah, she learned to
I
drive.
drove it once. Yeah.
She paid to go to a school and have them refresh her.
And Margaret didn't drive either?
You know, I don't remember. I think Margaret did.
All right, so you're working in a meat packing plant as a bookkeeper.
Yeah, that was my first job out of school. After that, I got a job as a bookkeeper at St. Mary's Hospital.
So at that time, it didn't occur to you to go to college because that just
I didn't want to go to college. I didn't like school, remember?
Yeah.
I have never liked to be confined to doing something on a regular schedule. I didn't like the idea that I'd have to get up and go to school every day. The only thing that got me through it was the music. And I think that that's a carryover to John and Jimmy. I don't know about you, but that's why, you know, people don't like to be told what to do. I think my father was like that too. People like that are better off in their own business. They don't want to have somebody tell them what to do.
So you're working at a hospital, and
And
you're driving a Cadillac. Your father's been dead less than a year, and you were dating.
yeah, not really dating. I did not want. I had a crush on a guy that was out of town. He lived out of town, and he was
Tommy from Vero Beach.
yeah, but he was actually from Pahokee,
Mm-hmm.
not Vero Beach. But I didn't know that, and I did not want to date your dad. I met him on Christmas Day in a service station. I had on a dress I had made in school with a square neck, plain dress. I was looking for honey because I had lost my voice and I was supposed to sing in a quartet, the one I told you about with these women. And
You went to a gas station looking for honey?
no, I was out looking for honey and I needed gas and I only had 50 cents.
Mm-hmm.
So I pulled in and I asked him if I could buy 50 cents worth of gas. And I think he told me no. I don't remember, but I think I might have left and got some more money and came back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what I did, yeah. Because I had a couple that lived off base, that the girl was a friend of mine. I don't even remember how I met her. But she was married, and she had followed her husband to West Palm Beach to be on the air base. He's on the base, but they lived in a little apartment. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I drove down there and got some money. But I remember telling her, I just met the nicest guy, ugly as can be, but he's the nicest guy. Well, you know what it was. He was washing a car, and he was all messed up. He had his sleeves up and all that, and his pants legs rolled up. That's what I meant by ugly, not features or anything. But anyway, I got the money and I came back, and I bought the gas, $1 worth of gas, and he wanted me to go out on a date with him, and I didn't want to because I was set for somebody else, and I had a crush on somebody. Well, I refused to date, so there was another day I went in there, but this time I had the girlfriend with me. And when your dad asked me to go out, she accepted the date for me. I didn't want to. And I found out that he found out where I lived because I had mentioned about this restaurant that was across the way from us and how they had all of these Chevys over there with the dual exhaust, and they were roaring at night, and they were streaming this blue flame out the back. And my dad did not like this man that was running this restaurant, and he'd called the police on him many times. So I was telling your dad about that, and he figured out Florida Avenue, a restaurant across the street, and a parkway in front, and he kept riding around the parkway. And I don't know if he stopped on his own or whether somebody saw him. And anyway, that's how I met your dad, and that's how we ended up. I think he ate at our house. So.
Mm-hmm. And okay, so he was in the Air Force at the time.
Yeah, and then his mom kept writing letters to us saying, your boyfriend so and so is making such and such. You know, your dad didn't make much money he didn't want to stay in the service. Mm-hmm. And so the money he was making was very little. We tried a month outside on our own in an apartment, but then because my dad had died, my mother's having a hard time, we moved back in with my mother into that apartment that was upstairs.
The upstairs apartment.
Yeah, the big one. So anyway, we ended up moving back to Chicago.
You never lived in the garage apartment?
Well, we did. I wasn't even going to mention it, but Lucille was in the back apartment at some point in time. And she was expecting a baby, and she lost the baby. So when she came out of the hospital, she didn't want to come back to where, she was intending to. So there was a switch there. And you know what? I don't remember if I was up in the apartment upstairs first and then moved to the garage, or whether I was in the garage and moved the other. I do know I found out in that garage when you learned to crawl. because you crawled into a fan. And I didn't know you could crawl. And you didn't get hurt, and it was lucky. But then I found out you could turn over when you fell out off of the bed. My nephew was in the house that day and had been going through playing tag with somebody else, and he ran through the bedroom, went out the screen, and jumped out into the yard. And so here you were a little baby on the bed, and you rolled over and went out that window and went through, you bounced in the bushes and went down onto the grass.
It was a second floor window?
No, first floor.
First floor.
Yeah, my mother's side room. The first bedroom, you know. My dad, at one point in time, that living room was a real long room, and he divided it and made a bedroom there. And that was the bedroom. It had a big double bed, and you were laying right in the middle of it. And I found out you could roll over when you went out the window. So you really did everything in a dramatic way, crawling into a fan, rolling out a window. So we took you to the emergency room, and Dad had just had a big cyst removed off his back that day. And he come shuffling his feet like this to get to you, to see, make sure his baby was okay.
In the same hospital?
Yeah, yep. So, anyway, we ended up back in Chicago.
And drove?
We drove in a,
Lincoln Zephyr
was it?
or something?
No, it was a Chevy. I think it was like a 37 Chevy. Old thing, and we had everything we owned on top of it. And you were in a buggy that was braced between the first seat and the back seat. You were in your own little bed. And I think you threw up too. You didn't like all that traveling. But
what time of year was it?
Oh, I don't remember. It must have been around summertime because we were staying by Grandma and Grandpa
So
on Ohio Street.
By them or in the basement or where?
No, we were in with them. And
in their apartment?
Yeah, on the first floor, because they had 3 floors. They rented out the basement, they rented out the top floor, and we stayed with them for about 3 months, and then we were able to move into a basement apartment.
Their basement
But
apartment?
no.
No.
Well, we went on to
You never lived in a basement apartment?
only never me.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Went to Quincy Street. Then we lived in a basement apartment after 3 months being in
What
Chicago.
was the address of Grandma's house in Ohio?
5002, wasn't it? I think it was 5002.
5002 West
Ohio. Yeah. And the reason we moved is Aunt Mary Jane told us that the winter was coming and Dad couldn't sleep on the back porch because he gave us that first bedroom and he was sleeping on the back porch. And so with winter coming, he couldn't stay out there.
Grandpa was sleeping
Yeah,
on the
your
back porch,
grand-
which I remember was very cold.
It was in the winter, but we were there in the summer. So that's how we ended up moving into this apartment in the basement, which had these big pipes over, it had the big radiators hooked up there, and it had big feeder pipes going through our basement apartment that fed the other 39 units. There
What was
was
the address there?
4938 Quincy,
What was
big
the
apartment building.
number? What was the number of the apartment?
I don't know. We were in the basement. I don't
Basement
remember.
on the left, as you looked in the
No,
courtyard.
no. Yeah, if you look in the courtyard, it was on the left. But there's a couple of stories about that place. You were always getting pneumonia. A couple of times you got pneumonia because we would burn up at daytime and freeze to death at night.
Because the heat just couldn't be regulated?
No, we had the radiators turned off, but that big pipe that fed the rest of the building went right over our ceiling, in our ceiling. They weren't even covered. So it was very hot. We ended up living there 4 years, and I hated it. But another time you crawled, was that you? No, it was Jimmy. Jimmy crawled out the window there and got into the courtyard. I don't, to this day, know how he got out of that crib. And those windows had a dust break, or whatever you call them, that was at an angle. It was glass. He got out of that window. He scaled the wall, got out the window, and was going down the street, and 2 boys brought him back and said, "Lady, is this your son?" And I looked right at him and said, "No, it can't be." My mind would not accept the fact that he was out of that crib.
This is about the same time you saw snow for the first time.
No, I saw snow before Jimmy was born.
Well, I mean,
I was
First
in that
one there.
apartment, and I ran out in a dress, a little thin summer dress, and was just yelling, and your dad had to come in and get me out, take me back in.
Because you're just acting silly.
I was acting goofy, yeah. I remember he was going like this,
And he's working at that time. How does he support the family?
The first job he had was at Glidden Paint. And those big, looked like silos, those great big, there was several of them. He used to walk across the top of those things doing something. I don't know if he's greasing them or what, but
You're not working at this time.
no.
This is not the soybean place, though. That was another place.
Yeah, no, it was.
Glidden was a soybean.
It
because
was
the paint
soy,
is based
yeah,
on soy.
yeah. And anyway, he worked there, and I remember I had you in the bathtub. It was right before Thanksgiving, the day before Thanksgiving, and he comes in, and the bathroom was right as you walk in the door on the left. You were in the tub, and I said, or he says to me, "Guess what?" And I said, "What?" He says, "I got fired or laid off." You know that old saying, first hired, or last hired, first fired? Well, it was typical of the big companies up there to lay people off before the holidays. And right the day before we got laid off. So after that, he got a job with Jewel, and he worked there for 10 years.
How did he get into Jewel?
I don't even remember how he got in. Maybe just went down and applied. I don't know.
So you were at home watching me and Jim.
Yeah, I had Jim.
And what was a typical day like?
Every day was the same. Get up in the morning, fix breakfast, get you guys dressed. We'd go out to the playground, or we'd go to Jewel.
Which playground?
It was right down the street on Quincy.
West?
Yeah, it was across Laverne. And I'd sit there and chat with the other mothers, and swing you guys and play with you. And then we'd go home and take a nap, and you'd take a nap. And then I'd get you up, get you, out again. I had a buggy, I'd push you. And in fact, there was a strange story about Jimmy. I bought a buggy at a garage sale for $5 before I even knew I was pregnant. And there was no reason for me to have that buggy because I had a nice stroller for you. So anyway, now we used to go to the Jewel and get groceries, come home, drop them off, and then go to the playground. And then later in the afternoon, we'd go to the playground again. And that's how I met a couple of nice girls. And you remember Mary Louise, the little girl, her mother. There was 3 girls.
Boserups and Crimmins are the only names that sticks in my head.
Well, Crimmins used to live next door to us on West End. But Boserup was the Danish girl I met that was in another apartment building on Quincy.
I remember, speaking of making food and going to Jewel and everything and making breakfast, I remember you telling me once you couldn't find grits.
Yeah, we had trouble there for a while finding grits.
Because it's just not made in the north at that time.
Right. Well, people didn't eat it up north.
Yeah. So they didn't sell it.
They still don't eat very much of it up here.
Okay, so you've got 2 kids. Mary comes and is born in the apartment. You're still in the apartment at that time, or did you leave?
I believe, I know that we brought her home. It's hard to remember this.
But
I
you left her.
remember being at St. Mary's Hospital, and there was a leakage problem, and they weren't going to let me go home. But luckily, she did get delivered. And I remember her being in the crib on West End Avenue.
Because it makes sense that you would have moved to a larger apartment or to a house when you had 3 kids.
Yeah.
Because that place is too small.
Yeah, I think that she came home to West End, if I'm not mistaken. But I know that she had a breathing problem there, bronchial or something, and she got baptized in the vestibule, a temporary baptism in the Catholic Church. And then later she had like a conditional one, like they say, if you're not already baptized, that this is it. She got baptized in the church and outside the church.
Just because you were afraid she was going to die?
She was pretty sick.
Mm-hmm. I remember hearing a story about me going to the bathroom on some priest.
No.
Throwing up on a priest.
I don't know anything about that. You would have to talk to your dad about that. What happened is that when Dad and I were living with Grandma in Florida, my mother was the legal guardian to a Mr. Gates. That was her girlfriend's husband, which was a lot older than her girlfriend. Well, her girlfriend was an old lady when I was a kid. I remember this woman was pretty ancient, and she died, and she made my mother promise to take care of her husband, keep an eye out on him. Well, the old man was really old, and he was a nursing care candidate, And anyway, there was a time there, I don't remember whether it was when the old man was living in our house or whether he was in a nursing home. But she was a legal guardian, and Brigadier General Gates flew down from Chanute Air Force Base to see my mother and to see his father. And my mother fixed a fried chicken dinner, and he was holding you, and your diaper must have been loose or something, but you went all over him. And if you're going to mess on somebody, a brigadier general's a good place to start. Yeah, he took it very kindly too. But
all right, I didn't mean to get you out of chronological order. So what's going on in the country in the late 50s? Eisenhower's the president. Are you watching local news? Are you paying attention to music? I mean, what?
Do you know this is year 2002, and you're asking me to go back to the 50s? All I know is for 10 years I had 5 kids, and I was quite busy, and I don't even know if I noticed the news. One thing that stands out in my mind is when Kennedy got shot. Everybody just sat there and looked at the television and cried. Everybody, everywhere. And we all loved it.
Well, where were you when you heard about it?
In my house on West End.
It was the middle of the school day.
Yeah.
You were there probably with a baby or two.
Uh-huh.
I was in 4th grade.
Yeah.
I remember there being music in the house a lot, because I can remember...
I always had the radio on, and I was always singing over the dishes.
Right, I can always remember music. Blue Velvet, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I was in the Adelines out in the West Suburban chapter.
So you were still taking part?
I joined, when I got onto West End Avenue, I joined a group, but it was very difficult because we didn't have 2 cars. And Dad was working at Jewel, and a lot of times he worked nights.
So the shifts would change?
No, it was an evening shifts, yeah. So it was hard because he'd be sleeping when you guys would get up and go to school. And then when you come home at lunch, not you, because you were not there, I don't think. Well, maybe you were, but anyway, at lunchtime, he'd be getting up to leave to go to work. And it doesn't seem like there was any, like you didn't really get to see him at lunch. Then he'd leave, and then when he'd come home, you'd be in bed. It was a very hard time for me.
It went on for how many years?
Well, he worked for Jewel 10 years.
And he was on the night shift for 10 years?
No, he started out as bread man on Cicero Avenue at the Jewel right at the end of Quincy Street. It hurts. We used to talk.
See Grandma?
We used to talk to each other almost every night. And sometimes I'll sit here and I'll think, boy, I wish you were here, Mary, to talk to. Yeah. She was lonesome. I was lonesome.
Well, Sheila hasn't looked at her father's yet.
Yeah, women are emotionally different from men.
Of course, I watched it.
You recorded it.
I recorded it, and I watched it very closely, partially because I just want to see how it went. And make sure it was all right, technically. But
Well, your hair's long.
Is it?
Yeah.
In a bad way?
No, it's just you remind me of a musician or something. And, you know, that hair, I've never seen it. Is it styled like that now?
I don't know. I wasn't really thinking
Oh,
about
well, you wet it and went like that to go walk the
But-
dog.
No, I've watched it since.
Oh. It's pretty.
Yeah. All right. Let me make sure I got this right in my head. All right, so let's say it's 1962.
Is it on now?
Yes.
Okay.
It's 1962 or so. And,
That's when I had Rosie.
okay. And what, in 1962, would you consider the family successful financially, or how hard was it money-wise there?
Oh, it was always hard. It was always hard. I mean, Dad was working so hard, and I remember there was a time where he tried to work an extra job to help Jim Farrell to do some kind of a janitorial business. And there was another time that got kind of rigged into something. He was trying to earn extra money, and there's this Montessori school that wanted, I guess this is further down the line than 62, though.
Yeah, because I worked at Montessori.
Yeah, that was further on. Anyway, he's always trying to pick up extra money, you know, and
How did not having a lot of money, do you remember like how much money was coming to the house per year back then?
I know nothing about how much money. I just know that we were short, and but we managed.
How
We
did
managed.
you manage? I mean, how did you make ends meet?
I don't know, Dennis. You just do it. You just do it. We always had food.
Did you
And
buy cheap food like?
oh, I managed to. Yeah. Well, no. Don't you think that you ate pretty good?
Well, I don't remember.
I'd always fry chicken, or I'd fix meatloaf, or fix spaghetti, or you know, we always had decent meals, I believe. And it took a lot of money for groceries. That was one of the expenses that we needed the money for, is that we ate good. And you know, it was, we used charge accounts. Daryl Sears carried us through for years to every time there was a new winter coat or winter boots and things like that. And it was always, you know, get the pay and put a payment down on Sears for the bill.
So we bought our clothes and our furniture on time.
Oh, I don't know about furniture on time. I know one time I went out and worked as a waitress to get a couch. But, you know, I never even dwell on things like that. We managed. That's all I know. And the various jobs I had that when you kids were little, I worked at Sunbeam for a while there after Rosie and John were little babies.
I remember a story about you were refusing to work on an assembly line where people getting their fingers are chopped off.
Yeah, I worked full time. We had a little Catholic old lady that took care of you guys. Is her name Sadie? Sadie. And she'd sit in the living room at night and say her rosary for you guys. She wouldn't eat a bit of crust of bread in my house. I don't know why. She probably felt like she was taking it out of your mouths if she ate it. But I fixed my dinner for you guys every night before I went to work. I had dinner ready in an electric skillet. All she had to do was serve the supper up to you guys. And I had to be at work at 4 o'clock.
In the afternoon?
Yeah, I had a 4 to 12 shift. And I was on a great assembly line that had been prorated at 150%. I don't even know how lucky I was to get in on that line. But then when they were going to reevaluate, and you know, they were dropping off that line. Once you make something, say you're making electric knives. I remember one time I had to bump the electric knives. It did something to the blades. But once a line is evaluated at a certain percent, then if you go over your quota, then you're considered at a higher level. Well, we were doing great.
Making what?
Oh, we were doing knives. I was on a knife line. They were electric knives. But then shortly after I'd started working there, they went off of that line, and they were trying to put me on some machine that they'd have to have straps on both arms, and the machine would pull your hands back, and this thing come down and crash. And some nice Polish lady gave me a little bit of advice, and she said, you tell them that you're afraid to go on it, and they can't force you to. I guess this is I think it was a union shop, and maybe this was some advice given to me for that reason, but it saved the day. I did not have to go on to that. But what happened was I slipped on the ice and went down on my butt and damaged my tailbone for a while. I was supposed to stay in bed, and we contacted Catholic Charities to see if we could get some help to come in, and Dad told them that we had small kids and that I needed help, and they wouldn't help us.
Because
I guess we weren't eligible.
we made too much money?
No, I don't know what it was. They just couldn't send anybody to help us. And boy, that stopped us. We didn't send any more money to Catholic Charities. So, because when we needed them, we couldn't get the help.
Did you have any issues with the Catholic school system? Since you sent all the kids to Catholic schools?
Oh, not really. Just, it depends on what school we're talking about.
St. Catherine?
Well, St. Tekla, I had a lot of problems.
But St. Catherine's, no.
Not really. I just didn't like the idea they switched the math on you when you're in the 8th grade, and they tried that new math, and it confused you so bad, and then when they turned around and went back to the old math, and don't you remember? Yeah, when you were in the 7th grade, I think they were switching the math to a new way, and it didn't work out, and all the kids were failing it, and so then they went back to the old method. That was one of the issues, but about that time, they were stopping this one Polish young priest, new young priest, was resenting all the old Irish ladies, the Italian ladies, coming up and sitting at the front pews saying their rosary, because he was preaching about, if you know the first 3 commandments, you don't need the rest, and he was kind of a rebellious priest, and people didn't like him.
Do you remember, what was the address on West End?
5667.
What was the phone number?
Mansfield 61705.
And if you're working at Sunbeam, then we have 2 cars by then, right? We must.
I think we did.
Was he working days or nights or?
Dad was working. Well, now you see, Dad went after working 10 years at Jewel. It was getting to him. You do recall Dad got ill, and it turned into nerves. And most people that work in a high pressure job like that, where they don't give you enough help to really run the store, people get attacked. Like, say your body is vulnerable to ulcers, or somebody else gets hemorrhoids, or somebody else gets chest pains. That was such a stressful job that Dad was hyperventilating. And when it got to the point where he had to carry a paper bag around to breathe and to get that carbon monoxide back into the system, that was about the time to think about quitting. And I guess we were tired up with the evening hours too, and not enough help, and him unloading trucks till 11 o'clock at night. Then when he'd come home, I'd have to fix him something to eat. Well, this is about the time that Jim Farrell told him, why doesn't he come and work at the Board of Education? And that's what Dad did. He switched.
But he was unemployed for a window of time.
A little while, and that's when you broke your leg. And that's when we were off of Jules insurance and on to another type of Blue Cross Blue Shield that hardly they didn't even pay for your x-ray. It was a bad policy, but we did have a little bit of coverage there for a while. And anyway, Dad got in with the Board of Education, and so he was working days. That's why Sadie had come in. And I think,
Well, that would have been 67 or 8.
No, she
She was before that.
well, I guess we both were gone then. Maybe that was before he went to the board.
The board was 67 or 8, and Sadie was like 63.
Okay, then he was still working at Jewel.
And I remember there was a black woman who came in and occasionally would iron. Do you remember any, like having people come by to do any work around the house?
No, I don't ever remember hiring anybody to iron.
Okay. I have a memory, but it was only one time. So money's tight. All 5 kids eventually go to Catholic grade schools. Dad is working most of the 60s at Jewel. You're still doing Sweet Adelines when you can.
Well, it wasn't when I was at Sunbeam.
Right, because you're working nights. And
I quit the West Suburban chapter after 2 years because people had to come and get me to drive me, and they were already out in the west suburbs, Berwyn, and it was an inconvenience for that girl. So I just quit. And it wasn't until the 70s, I think about 76, I joined the Melodiers in Northbrook. And I was in that over 25 years.
How did you help? I mean, with 5 kids and all these work responsibilities, how much time could you devote to reading to the kids and taking them places and
little ones? I read them at nap time in the afternoon, and we managed to do things. You know, we did things.
If when I was little, what was my favorite thing to do?
What age?
Oh, I'm thinking 8.
Well, at 8 years old, is this when you had Kevin Duffy for a friend? You used to spend a lot of time with Kevin. You liked planes. You always had planes hanging from your ceiling. You'd put planes together. You liked to watch television. You liked trains. You had a train set up in the basement.
Did I read?
Oh, you always reading. Yeah.
Kind of describing my life. Everything I ended up getting interested in.
Yeah.
Television, aviation, writing.
Yeah.
And I remember doing a theater thing at one point
Yeah.
at the Austin Library.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what it was.
We went to the library a lot. We walked a lot of places. Before there was another car, we walked everywhere. I can remember when we were back on Quincy Street that I had that big buggy that I would put you on the edge of it, let Jimmy lay in it, and I'd push you guys. And one time I walked all the way over to Madison Street, Chicago Avenue, which is past Grandma's house. She was at Ohio Street, then there were some more streets, and then there was Chicago Avenue. I walked as far as there just to get out of the house and have something to do. But we did a lot of walking. And I used to take you to the Stevenson Playground. Remember, we did that a lot up at Lake Street in Austin. Isn't that where it is? I'm mixing up my streets now because it's been so long, but it was Austin Boulevard, wasn't it? And Lake Street, where there was that shallow pool that I jumped in the water one time to save you.
Was that called Ridgeview? Was that Ridgeview or Ridgeland?
Ridgeland. I don't know.
But that was on Ridgeland and Lake.
Maybe. But I remember you fell in the pool or something, and I jumped fully clothed in the pool after you.
I could swim, couldn't I? I was a good swimmer.
I think you were little at the time.
How did you get taught how to swim?
I don't know. I always swam.
Didn't I hear you were just chucked in the water?
You know, no. But I would like to go back because we missed something important. When I was young, I went swimming almost every day.
In the ocean?
Yeah, and there was a skating rink across from the air base that when I was older, my sister Lucille and I were in all kind of skating shows.
Ice skating?
No,
Roller
there was
skating.
no ice skating down there.
Roller skating?
Yeah, roller skating. We were in shows. And my sister has a picture of me in a Rumba outfit making a nice pose and all. But my mother used to go sit out at the rink at night and watch us skate because we were right across from the air base, and we were kids. And then we went to the theaters because Dad had the pass. I was in the Civil Air Patrol. I used to fly in these small Cub planes. I went to Warner Robbinsville for 2 weeks when I was 14. I lost about 15 pounds those 2 weeks. I had no money to buy anything. I didn't need to have money because they fed you, but I couldn't buy a drink if I was thirsty. I hated their water. It was like iron or sulfur. Anyway, I had a lot of activities between the Civil Air Patrol and the Sweet Adelines and swimming and movies and skating. And when I came up to Chicago, I was put into a basement apartment for 4 years with nothing, no activities.
And no friends other than the ladies that were down the street.
Right, people at the playground. So anyway, then now when we moved into that house, it was Grandpa and Grandma that loaned Dad $1,000 as a down payment for a house that was to settle an estate. And Uncle Johnny, one day I looked out and here he was coming up the alley with some play set, a gym set for you guys that we set it up behind the garage, behind the house on West End. And we had a lot of family at that time. We had Uncle Johnny and Aunt Catherine and their children was Katie, we call beefsteak Katie, and then there was Vince, roast beef, and then we had Vince and Michael and Jack, Tommy, and then down the street was Aunt Annie, which was the best person on earth. She was our glue for the family. She'd go from one family to another on the weekends and spend the night and carry the news. And she was a wonderful lady. Great cook. She worked at St. Pat's for over 30 years, feeding the brothers. And let's see, there was also Aunt Catherine, another Aunt Catherine, that was Marvin's wife. Catherine was your grandfather's sister. And Annie was your grandfather's sister. And they had 2 daughters, Marvin, and Kathleen. They had Mary and I think they named their daughter Catherine too. But then there was Aunt Molly and Uncle Tom. Molly was your grandfather's sister also. She was dark black hair, where Annie was a redhead.
So there was a lot of family support from the Barrett clan from Chicago.
And there was Peggy and there was a whole bunch of kids. Peggy, Tommy, and Patsy. That was Aunt Molly's kids. Yeah, we used to have big family doings, weddings and funerals and all.
I remember, speaking of Uncle John, coming up the driveway, or Uncle Frank, whoever it was.
No, Uncle Frank was the man that brought all the Barretts over here from Ireland. He worked for CTA.
But I remember somebody had a house that was in the path of the Eisenhower expansion, or building the Eisenhower Expressway. And I remember getting a bicycle from somebody's storage shed in the basement of one of those things.
I think that was at Uncle Tom's house, and he wasn't in the way. He was just living right next to it. Their house.
I remember looking down the street and seeing one after another truck being loaded with literally everybody moving out at once.
Really?
You had to get out of the way of the expressway. Everybody had till that weekend to get out.
I don't know about that, Dennis.
Well, I was there with Dad. You weren't there.
No.
But I remember getting a bicycle out of some dusty coal bin that had been stashed down there.
They did expand the Eisenhower, and that was back in the Austin district.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we were there on the cutting of the ribbon.
I remember a helicopter came in and everything. It was the first time I'd been up close to a helicopter.
Yeah, we were there.
We were there for ribbon cutting on the Eisenhower Expressway.
Right.
Okay, so we're West End throughout the 60s, and there was a bunch of kids around in the neighborhood, all over the place.
Right. And you used to play ball in front of the house on West End all the time. You guys would play baseball all the time. There was like a whole big gang of it. The O'Malleys, Patrick Halpin, is it? Halpin. And Kevin Duffy and the Farrells. It was like it was like an organized team of kids out in front every day.
And
I used to fry chicken and give kids chicken, or I'd make fudge and hand the kids fudge. And
so, you know, you've adjusted to the Chicago winters by then, which...
Oh, we had some fierce winters. In those days, it's not like now. It was really cold, bitter cold.
And we'd walk to school and back every day in that cold.
It was terrible. Well, if we had 2 cars, we might have given you a ride. But at that time, I know we only had 1 car because when it came time and our neighborhood was changing, did you want that story to go in there?
It's texture.
We had a completely, when we moved into West End, it was more of a Jewish area. It was old people, old retired Jewish people. It was a very old settled neighborhood with big trees and beautiful houses, and nothing was cookie cutter. It was all the old time houses. We even had some Victorian houses. And it was west of Central, and we were between Waller and Parkside on West End. And as time changed, things were changing everywhere. They started the integration of the high schools, and we had blacks coming in to Austin High School, which was east of us. And then when people's children were going to the school, being bused in, they decided they wanted to live in the area that their kids went to school in. And we had some gay gentlemen that moved into a house near us that I knew the 2 women that lived there, and it was Hazel taking care of her mother. Her mother was in her 90s, and she died. And then 6 weeks later, Hazel died. So that house went up for sale. The brothers sold it to a couple of gay guys that were really nice neighbors and all.
The third house down on the right.
Yeah, the third house, and it was right next to us. Our house faced north, and we had apartment buildings on the east side of us, and we had homes facing west on the west side of us. And we were in the middle of the block there.
The backs of their houses
ran into ours.
ran into the west face of our house.
Right, and they had short yards for the first 3 houses, and then after that, the rest of the people down the block had long back lots. Well, anyway, these gay guys bought the property, and they really fixed it up. They were really nice neighbors, but for some reason or other, I don't know why, they sold the house to blacks when they moved, and 5 families moved in the dead of night, and they put 5 names up on the mailbox. And
one house?
Yes, and they
5
families moved into that house, and we knew something was happening because Mr. Lindgren, that lived behind us, like the first house that had the big backyard, that Mr. Lindgren, the older Mr. Lindgren, was telling me over the fence about how they saw all of these mattresses put down on the floor in that basement. They could see from their driveway all of these beds put in there. And sure enough, in the middle of the night, they moved in. The next morning, they weren't shy at all. Around 6 o'clock, they were out there playing basketball, making all kind of noise on a Sunday morning. And they were also making noise out in the front because they had a grill on the front porch and a grill in the backyard. They were cooking at that hour of the morning. And one of our neighbors that was one of your boyfriend's parents, Mrs. O'Malley, she's a judge, and she came over.
Street. Yeah.
She came over and told them that she was a liberal person, but that this is wrong for them to disturb the neighborhood like that at that hour of the morning. She told them because I guess she could hear it. Her windows faced the front. Anyway, shortly after that, because I think the post office reported them for having 5 families in there and made some of them move. And then the shooting started. There was somebody was shot in that house. It was getting bad. And because they sold to blacks, other people started putting signs up to sell their house. We put our sign up out on the front, and somebody kept taking our sign down because they wanted to lock the white people into the neighborhood so that they could achieve segregation or integration. And we ended up having to put the sign up on the second floor over our roof between two windows. So people, going down the street, we were 50 feet back away from the street itself. We had 50 feet of parkway that belonged to the city in front of our house that we never had to cut the grass or anything. We had all these beautiful trees and all. So later I heard, after the white people moved out, the city didn't take care of that property at all. It got to look real bad. And of
We were
course,
still living there. Were we still living?
no, when we moved out, when the white people moved out. Anyway, we put a for sale sign up, and we did get a couple that wanted to buy our house. And so it tied us up for 6 weeks because the FHA had to okay it for these people. And then we had to fix that house better than what we could afford to fix it for ourselves. They made us plaster ceilings, that we had to paint the whole outside of the house. We had to put a lot of money into that house just to move. And anyway, what happened was that our people that were going to buy our place, the deal fell through. And all the white people on our block had moved. We were the last ones to move.
It seems like it happened pretty fast.
It did happen extremely fast.
Like months?
They sold to blacks. Blacks were anxious to come in. No, it wasn't a matter of months. It was like a matter of weeks that everybody was moving out. And people were there was a lot of unscrupulous real estate people that would come in and tell these people, well, the blacks are going to come in here and you're not going to get much money for this house. You're going to lose value. You better sell it while you can. And then they'd offer them a ridiculous amount of money. That's what happened to us. The guy wanted to offer us a small amount of money. We wouldn't take it. And we eventually sold it, I think, for $11,000. I forget, but I think it was like $11,000. But whatever. We had been there long enough to where we had a lot of equity in our house so that when we sold it, we'd have some money to move with, where a lot of the people didn't have it. Because you know what they did? They passed a law then that most times you could buy a house with 20% down. Well, because they were trying to discourage people from moving, they changed it to where you had to come up with a third of the money down to buy a house. Luckily, we did have the third. In fact, we had to borrow another $1,000 from Grandma and Grandpa. So when we moved up to, when we were looking for a place, we finally did get a buyer. And when we moved, instead of going 32 blocks up north around St. Patrick's like we originally was going to do, because you were starting St. Pat's, we went ahead and went 6,400 north. And that did put us into a nice neighborhood that was nice until when I moved. So anyway, that was what happened to our neighborhood. It got so bad that we got, the reason I'm thinking of this is about the second car business. Grandma gave us Grandpa's car that was in her garage.
57 Chevy.
So that I could drive you guys to school in the morning, because there were carloads of blacks that were going by throwing rocks and things to the white kids walking to school.
I remember.
So we'd have to drive you to school, pick you up at lunch. The Catholic school had no cafeteria. They had no insurance to allow you to stay on the grounds to eat. You couldn't even carry a lunch and eat at school. They made you leave. So I had to pick you up, bring you home, and then take you back to school at lunch, then pick you up after school and bring you home. And it was really getting to be dangerous, because when you were in school, I could go up on the second floor of the house and look out the back and see the alley that went behind the apartment buildings. There were a lot of questionable people moving into the apartments that were selling drugs and all. And I would see 3 and 4 police cars out there a day at the back of the buildings.
You remember when Martin Luther King was shot? Do you remember that event? The riots and everything?
Yeah.
What was that like?
It didn't really affect me, or us, I don't believe, but I know of it happening. And it,
I remember being sequestered into the house. I remember you wouldn't let us go out.
well, there was bad things happening everywhere, and it was like it was our fault. So anyway, I was so glad to get out of that neighborhood, and we were the last ones to leave in our area.
I remember hearing gunshots at night.
Yeah, yeah. It was all, and then somebody was trying to break in our house a couple of times, and luckily we had this dog Fang that we got that hated black people. And we'd have, one time he went out a window when we were cleaning windows up on the top floor, and he got out and jumped off the roof to chase a man. Jumped off the roof.
Second floor?
Yes, and was chasing a black guy. And that dog is what saved us from getting broken into, too, because somebody was trying to get in our back door one night. You could see all the marks around where people tried to get in. And
Remember, we'd get up and we'd see scrape marks on the latch.
yeah, it was a good thing the house was sitting up, you know, so that people couldn't crawl in the back window to get in the kitchen or anything. We were up high. And, of course, they'd have to carry a ladder if they wanted to try anything to get in. But it was a bad situation. It's one of the worst times of my life is living in Austin after the neighborhood changed.
Pretty different from Florida.
Yeah. Oh, and that reminds me that when I did leave Florida, Dad got lost coming into Chicago, and he saw Cicero Avenue, and he knew his mother and dad lived right off Cicero Avenue. So we got on Cicero Avenue way down the south of the lake and come north. And I went through areas that I had never seen before. I saw black men on blankets laying with white women. And that, to me, was a whole different culture. And I started crying. And we went through shabby areas, scary areas. And when I got up to Ohio Street, Dad had told me if I didn't like Chicago, he'd bring me back, which he never did, and I never liked it for years and years. And on Sunday, I'd get him to take us for a ride, and we'd go out to Lake Geneva or somewhere, and I'd cry all the way back into Chicago. I did not want to come back into Chicago. Finally, I settled in, but it took years. And then when you guys were all born, I couldn't move back because our lives had changed. Dad converted me into a Yankee. He even corrected my language. If I say y'all, he'd say all of you. And anytime I'd say something Southern, I was corrected.
Did you have to start wearing shoes here?
Yeah, he used to tell people, my wife has soles on her feet that thick.
I'm reaching the end of my questions here. Is there any particular stories you'd like to relate that we haven't yet?
Well,
We talked about supernatural, we talked about your dad, we talked about...
Well, I didn't tell you about Mary. Mary said that she saw a ghost in that house on West End, an old lady sitting in the living room.
Yeah, I remember that story.
Yeah. And there was another thing. I went to a seminar in Oak Park at a church about demons. And I came back and I went over to my neighbor, Cusimano, Dolores Cusimano. I was sitting on her back porch, and it was a nice, shiny, quiet day. And when I was telling her all that happened and all the prayers that was going, they even prayed for our safety to get home, all of a sudden there was this, ooh, and there was no wind. And yet that back porch had that, scared Dolores and I to death. And that we never did find out what could have explained that.
Yuck. The house on Ravens, talk a little bit about that. I mean, that was a nice $21,000 house or something like that.
Yeah, we paid a third down, and it was a nice neighborhood. We were near the pool at the park there.
And it was in Milwaukee. It was a 64, what was the address?
6400 North and 60, it was It was a 6200 North and 6400
What was
West.
the address?
6461 West Raven.
What was the phone number?
Oh my gosh. Oh, isn't that funny? I can remember the one on West End.
Mm-hmm. You probably remember your one on Florida Avenue too.
Yeah, I can.
What is it?
4901.
4901.
I don't know. I hadn't thought of. I didn't call myself very often, you know. And I worked at one company for 10 years, at AB Dick Company, and I stayed home 2 years, had a hysterectomy, stayed home, and then I went to work at Granger and worked there for 15 years.
In the tax department.
No, I started out in their order and billing department, and they taught me how to use a computer, sent me out and had me trained at a bank downtown on a certain machine, and came back and they gave me a promotion. I worked that machine. Then 6 months later I was promoted to the export documentation in the international department. Then from there, I was there 5 years. And from there I went in to the tax department and was an executive secretary for the director of taxes. Then I left that company for 2 years because it was taken over by GEC of England. They were laying people off every 2 weeks for 2 years. And they were just making the place go bone dry for people. You're afraid to talk in the hallway. They told you if you go in the hallway, carry a piece of paper with you to make it look like you're going to do some business or something, you know, and don't talk to anybody. So anyway, when I finally got laid off there, they held me on an extra 2 weeks so that I would have my 10 years in. I was so close to my 10 years. And I think they probably were afraid of a lawsuit. I think it was a matter of weeks, maybe it was a little more than 2 weeks, I don't know. But anyway, they kept me so I'd have my 10 years, and then I was let go along with all the rest of the secretaries on executive row, they called it. So staying home 2 years, then going to Granger and working there after 5 years in human resources and working for the newspaper, the company's nationwide newspaper, which I did the data entry and I did all the corrections of English. They put it on my review that the paper wouldn't be as good as it was without my talent. And so after 5 years doing that, I went into the real estate department where I started doing all kinds of repairs and replacements at the 350 branches.
Of W.W. Granger.
Right. And then after that, I went out on disability, have my eyes operated on for cataracts and have double knee replacement. And Rosie took care of me when I got out of the hospital. And I sold the house and moved up into Lake Zurich because it's a nice neighborhood. And Dad sold it, or not sold, but Dad left his basement apartment and went out to be near the boys in Bensonville. So it's...
So all the girls are up here and all the boys are down
there. Yeah. And we still have our family get-togethers.
And your hobbies is still of Sweet Adelines?
No, I quit after winning the world championship 3 times. 3-time gold medalist.
Like Michael Jordan.
Yep. And, yeah. And so when I hit 65, I retired. I was in Orlando. We had just won our 3rd gold medal in a row. And I knew it was going to be expensive to stay in it, and I couldn't really afford to stay in it. So I wanted also to take up my genealogy on a full-time basis, which I actually haven't been able to do because there's so many cute grandkids around, and I've been spending my time with grandkids. So
I can see where genealogy would lose out on that.
Right. In fact, I turned a good job down last week. 5 days a week, 9 to 3, $14 an hour. I don't want to work 5 days a week. I don't want to take in a new hobby or a new, start out new, fresh working again. I want to be able to have time to see my grandkids.
I don't have anything else.
That's it?
That's it.
Good.
All right.